I'd like to call this meeting of the Woonsocket City Council to order for Monday, March 21st, 2022. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Here.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Here.
Councilman Gillette?
Here.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Here.
Councilman Sousa?
Here.
Councilman Ward?
Here.
President Gendron.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you could please stand for the prayer and the pledge.
God our Father, we ask that you send your blessing upon this city and upon this council. Guide us in our efforts, increase our motivation, and strengthen our resolve to build a better community and ensure a brighter future for the city of Woonsocket. This we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On cue. Public hearings, Madam Clerk.
Public hearing for 2022-2023 budget for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnerships Program, Home Funds, Home American Rescue Plan Funds, and Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, along with substantial amendment for the CDBG 2021-2022 budget.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor or against this item? Hearing none, move on to the next public hearing, Madam Clerk.
22 LC09, public hearing on transfer of secondhand dealer's auto license from A-Wheels, Inc., doing business as Shannon Motors, Woonsocket, to East Bay Auto Leasing, LLC, doing business as Shannon Motors, Woonsocket, at 50 Founders Drive.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anyone here that would like to speak for or against this request? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. To close the public hearing, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed. Agenda for Board of License Commissioners.
22 LC09, application on transfer of secondhand dealer's auto license from A-Wheels, Inc., doing business as Shannon Motors, Woonsocket, to East Auto Leasing, LLC, doing business as Shannon Motors, Woonsocket, at 50 Founders Drive.
Motion approved.
Motion made by
Second.
Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22 LC09 is approved, 7-0.
22 LC10, application of licenses and renewal of licenses.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the following licenses: new holiday licenses and quarterly entertainment, also tobacco, and renewal of licenses for automobile junkyard, bowling alley, holiday, massage therapy, quarterly entertainment, secondhand dealer auto, secondhand dealer merchandise, street vendor, and tobacco.
Motion made by
Second.
Councilman Canoia, Councilman Gillette, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22 LC10 is approved, 7-0.
22 LC11, a request of Autumnfest Steering Committee to hold a Tag Day event on Saturday, September 10th, 2022, with a rain date of Sunday, September 11th, 2022.
Motion to approve?
Motion made by
Second.
Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez and Councilman Ward. Comments? I will just make the one comment that I usually make, that I do not support tag days in the city of Woonsocket, so I will be voting no. It is not reflective on the organization, but just my feelings regarding tag days. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Let the record reflect that Councilman Gillette and the chair have voted no, but it passes, 22 LC11 passes 5-2. Public comment. If there is anyone here that would like to address the city council, I would ask that you would approach the podium, adjust the microphone so that we can hear you when you speak to us. Please state your name and address for the record, and we ask that you keep your comments to under 5 minutes and, of course, in good taste. Is there anyone that would like to address the city council?
Jennifer Dubois, 465 Coast Street, Woonsocket.
This is in regards to the safe usage site for Woonsocket. I am here tonight to speak on the behalf of the community that no one wants to listen to. I'm a mother who less than a year ago lost my 19-year-old son to a fentanyl overdose. My son bought his drugs here in Woonsocket. He did his drugs in Woonsocket. He overdosed in Woonsocket. And after 7 days of being on life support here at Landmark Hospital, he ultimately lost his life here in Woonsocket. My son started to struggle with substance abuse at the age of 13 after experiencing a horrible trauma. He did not intend to become an addict. He simply started smoking weed with his friends, became paranoid, was offered Xanax and Klonopin by a friend, and by the age of 14 was in his first rehab. For the next 6 years, he struggled with addiction as the drugs became worse and more potent. And we attempted every program, group home, hospital, rehab, and even the Rhode Island Training School, which was a fight within itself to get any of these services, which are all very limited. I had to literally call DCYF on myself to get help. Addiction is a disease. It is not a choice, because my 13-year-old child did not choose to become an addict and die at the age of 19. The one thing I had learned after all these years of dealing with addiction is that it's not a choice. And no matter what I did, I could not force my son to get clean. Not by tough love, not by kicking him out, not by going out of my way to make his life so uncomfortable that thinking if he had no food, no place to stay, or was left in the cold, he would just go to rehab and get clean. It's not that easy. Addiction is a disease that once it gets a hold of you, it literally changes your brain chemistry, and every part of you, physically, emotionally, and mentally, craves the drugs. Your body is so dependent on these drugs, you literally get sick if you do not use. Safe usage sites are needed because whether you like it or not, people are going to use these drugs regardless. I learned that the hard way. A safe usage site drastically reduces needles in the streets or in the parks where the kids play. It reduces people getting high and overdosing on a public street. It reduces the spread of disease such as HIV and hepatitis. It reduces the response needed from fire and rescue and reduces hospitalizations. It is a much safer way to handle the issue rather than everyday people going out into the community on their own doing harm reduction. And overall, it saves the city money from not overusing these services. A safe usage site is monitored by healthcare personnel and it also offers resources for those who are ready to get clean. Harm reduction saves lives, period. What other option do we have in Woonsocket? Trauma, poverty, and mental illness are the leading cause of substance abuse, and in Woonsocket, all of that is more prevalent in the population than not. All we have is Community Care Alliance, which is so overrun and limited with what they can handle, it's ridiculous. The education system is mediocre at best, and if you live and work in Woonsocket, the highest paying job the city really offers its residents, unless you make it to one of our major companies at CVS, you're most likely a CNA, a manager at a Dollar Tree, or working at a fast food restaurant. And with a liquor store on every corner, which does not seem to help substance abuse, what other resources or options do we really have to try? The more we let this go, the more the city struggles. The more substance abuse takes over, the financial burden to keep the city going falls on the taxpayers, who have to compensate for the people who are not able to contribute as citizens, and they are struggling too. Please stop treating Woonsocket as the city that you want it to be and start addressing Woonsocket for the city and the people that are in it right now. It's struggling, and a large part of the population in the city are suffering. Please stop turning your back on them. They are fighting a disease. Every one of them is somebody's child, mother, father, family member. If you are not willing to listen and address these needs, why are you here? Please. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council?
Good evening, members of the City Council. Alex Kithis. I live at 153 Winter Street. I'm here tonight just to briefly speak against Resolution 22R28. I think, the community's made it very loud and clear that spending over a third of our ARPA funds on the expansion of police infrastructure is not in the spirit of the American Rescue Plan Act. it's supposed to be used to help the city dig out from the effects of COVID, and to be used in line with public input as has been gathered in a couple of ways over the last 8 months or so. The survey that was run by the city in late summer of last year, the community made it overwhelmingly clear that housing, community health and wellness, and mental health and domestic violence services should be what we invest this money in. And if this resolution passes tonight, about 3/4 of the ARPA money given directly to the city would have been either allocated or spent, and basically none of it will have been on those things that the survey overwhelmingly reflected were the public priorities. So, we're appealing to the better natures of the members of the City Council to vote this resolution down and to recommit to spending the rest of the ARPA funds on what the community very clearly stated that we want and need in order to help our city recover from the effects of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm speaking in regards to Resolution 22R34.
If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Wanda Ofakansi, address 120 Northeast Street, Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Thank you.
So as I'm sure we all know, our lovely city has a problem. In 2018, Woonsocket's overdose death rate was the 5th highest in the state at 31.6 per 100,000. Of the Rhode Island cities and towns with the highest death rate, Woonsocket had the highest overdose death rate at 48.6 per 100,000. From 2016 to 2019, Woonsocket has had the 2nd highest cumulative rate of overdose-related emergency room visits in Rhode Island, 746.5 per 100,000. So we know that we have a crisis in the city. We know that we have an issue with substance use, particularly with opioid use. And we know that the burden of folks who are being transported to the emergency rooms has been increasing, which again is going to create a greater burden on our healthcare system and a greater burden on our taxpayers when we're focusing more on emergency care as opposed to preventative care. Experts across the state and certainly around the country are working to reduce substance abuse by encouraging mental health support, treatment recovery, harm reduction, and as a means to reduce substance abuse and overdose. They also recommend safer drug use practices, such as having someone nearby or checking in on you by phone or text message, carrying naloxone, using fentanyl test strips, trying a small amount of the substance first before consuming a full dose, and being prepared or having someone on standby who's prepared to administer naloxone and call 911 on your behalf should they happen to overdose. All of these measures do not encourage people to take drugs or to start taking drugs. They're to help people who are already suffering from addiction so that they stay alive. Safe sites are an important part of a coordinated preventative effort. In public health, prevention can be categorized into 3 levels. Primary prevention. So that's when you're increasing access to preventative mental health services, because we know there's a strong connection between mental illness and substance use. We're promoting conditions that would prevent adverse childhood experiences, like connecting children to youth and children and youth to enrichment programming, giving them the tools to build and maintain strong, healthy relationships with their peers, with their families, with healthy adult mentors, with their school, and with their community. Reducing the misuse of substances through uses of medication lock bags, prescription drug drop-off sites, including changing the way that doctors treat pain so that there's not an over-reliance on opioid substances. Then there's secondary prevention. This is about intervening right when the harm has started. So you want to treat people and connect people to treatment services if they have misused substances or if they've experienced an overdose. And then there's tertiary prevention. So this one is about minimizing the harm to which people are already exposed. Tertiary prevention targets people who are at the greatest and most pressing risk of harm, suffering, and death So as it relates to misuse, this refers to people who are already in the throes of addiction. There are services for them too. Safe sites are intended to address this group. So for prevention work to have the greatest effect and to save the most lives, we have to operate at all 3 levels of prevention simultaneously. We can't pick and choose whose lives deserve saving and whose lives aren't worth it. We need to give our most vulnerable community members a fighting chance so they can live to see another day and so we can connect them to treatment services. We can't offer treatment to someone who has already died. We cannot turn our backs on those whose lives are most at risk. When people in the city of Woonsocket continue to die preventable substance-related deaths, how can each of you look their loved ones in the eye and say, we had the opportunity to keep them safer and save their lives, but we voted against it? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the City Council? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have a motion.
Motion to accept as listed.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Ward and Councilwoman Gonzalez to accept the consent agenda. Are there any items to be taken up separately?
Council President,
Councilman Ward.
I'd like to take up 22 CS 10 separately. And I'm just going to pick one, and I'll say the 22 CO 23 separately.
So for the consent agenda as presented, with the exception of 22 CS 10 and 22 CO 23, are there any other items to be taken up separately? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is received as presented with the exception of 22 CS 10. Do we have a motion to receive 22 CS 10?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoyer.
Council President,
Councilwoman Sierra?
I'd like to let the record reflect that I am recusing myself from this vote.
Okay, let the record reflect that. And comments on 22 CS 10? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22 CS 10 is received on a 6-0 vote. 22 CO 23.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilman Ward,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments?
I just reminded myself, Council President, I do have a question of the Finance Director or whoever may be able to answer the question. The very last item that was submitted to us at the back end of the bids had to do with the broadband services for the Higher Education Center, and it's using CDBG funds to pay for this service. Are we operating this higher education center, or is some other organization responsible for the operation of this?
No, it's a state-run
The
operation.
state's operating. Then, if I may ask, why would we be handling the bid and paying the bill for the broadband connection?
The funding that's being used for the broadband is funding that was made available to the city during COVID for very specific types of uses, and broadband is one of them. So we're bringing broadband onto Main Street, which is going into the building to service the folks who will be attending school, if that's what we're talking about.
Yes, no, I am. It's the bid that went to Ocean Inc. for cabling, network equipment, plus a monthly port fee for, looks like it's just for 2 months. And then there's a recurring annual port fee of $1,200. But it indicates here that it's being paid for out of CDBG funds, not a special COVID fund.
Yeah, not the port fees, though.
Any of it.
Oh, the recurring fund?
I'll let the director answer.
Councilman, on that, we're just paying for the install. We're not paying for the port fees or the recurring fee.
Okay.
So the bid was not awarded for those 2 items.
Oh, all right, I see. It's just for the fiber optic cabling and the network equipment.
Correct, and that
That's it.
was under
Okay.
the CV, Community Development Block CV.
So that's just getting the building set up.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. All set.
Any other comments on 22CO23? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And 22CO23 is received 7-0. 22M03. Do we have a motion? I got to do another one first. 22M03.
Motion to accept. As
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And 22M03 is received 7-0. Thank you, Madam Clerk. On the minutes from the regular meeting held March 7th, 2022. Motion made by Councilman Gillette,
Second?
seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez. Changes or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And the minutes from the regular meeting held March 7th, 2022 are received and approved 7-0. Moving on to, wait a minute. Councilman, before we get to presentations, could you make a motion for me for one?
29, okay. I make a motion to move out of order and bring forward Resolution 22R29 in connection with the Autumnfest.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez to take out of order 22R29. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And we have 22R29 before us, Madam Clerk.
Granting permission to use city property.
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Councilman Sousa,
Second?
seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez. The reason that I was asked to take out of order is we have a representative here from Autumnfest. If anyone had a question for her for this particular request. Are there any comments from the City Council?
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
Says dates of July.
This is a Summerfest.
Summerfest?
Yes.
Okay, this is a fundraising thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All set.
Okay. Any other comments?
A little confused because it reads an awful lot like Columbus Day weekend, too.
Well, it's just going to be warmer. I'll enjoy it more than Autumnfest.
Okay.
No other comments? I would ask all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And 22R29 is approved 7-0. Going back to the regular order of business, Madam Clerk. Presentations of petitions, memorials, and remonstrances.
22P11, request of Vice President Ward to address the following items. 1, Board of Library Trustees ordered compensation increase for the director and assistant director denied by the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This matter came to my attention, frankly, because my wife is on the Board of the Library Trustees. And it appears that several months ago, the board had voted to extend a raise to the director and assistant director, and it was submitted to City Hall to the Finance Department to be implemented. And the communication I received from the board was that it was refused at the direction of the mayor. And I suggested to them that they send a communication through the law department to the finance department, etc. And my understanding of this was that the solicitor had communicated that the Board of Library Trustees under state law is autonomous in relation to its management of its budget. And I have heard that the chairwoman of the Library Board of Trustees is again submitting an email requesting that the agreed upon compensation increase be implemented. Has that been done? And if not now, what has
I can
held it
respond
up?
to that. So
Sure.
I never denied anything. That's the first thing, so I don't know who told you that. Secondly, I, like you, asked the solicitor if that request was legal, and he researched the Rhode Island general law and determined that the board had the authority to do that as long as there was funding within the budget. So beyond that, I don't know.
Okay. I will communicate.
So that can be very
You
easily
have
resolved
communicated that to
tomorrow.
the board members.
I'll check into that tomorrow and see.
Okay. My understanding is the chairwoman would have been sending another email following up for that not having been done as yet, and this was apparently approved last fall. And the request was submitted then. So I'll be happy to share with you whatever written information I can provide to you from prior communications, and I would ask that you simply implement that which is authorized to them under the state law. Second item I have is, and I know I've been found to be doing a lot of research on legislation because I'm finding more and more of it is something that often touches a nerve, but I'm doing it, and this is not to pick on an individual, but our Senator Murray has co-sponsored a very long list of legislation this session. We dealt with some of it in prior meetings. We'll be dealing with another piece of legislation that she has co-sponsored coming up. And this one in particular, though it doesn't have a companion bill in the House, I found somewhat disturbing, and I think the Public Safety Director may find this a little bit disturbing, because what it would do is it's Senate Bill 2643, introduced on March the 10th, just about a week, little over a week and a half ago. And what it does in its 12 pages, and I'll read from the summary, because it says it well. This act would abolish the penalty of life without parole and amend or repeal all sections of the general laws regulating prisoners serving a sentence of life without parole. Now, we don't have a death penalty. There are many sides to that argument, but we simply don't have a death penalty. But it has always been understood that there are certain crimes when committed under certain circumstances, especially when it comes to murdering public safety officials in the course of their duty or otherwise, that some people, for the crimes that they commit, are best serve the community when they spend the rest of their lives in prison and they have no chance of parole. This would eliminate that, and anybody that would be charged with the most offensive and heinous crimes, no matter how bad it is, no matter how offensive it is, no matter how deranged it is, no matter who's involved in that murder, which I think is pretty much the only crime you can be sent to prison without parole, or murders, or multiple murders, or murders of small children and their families, or murders of police officers or firefighters in the course of doing their duty. They would be eligible for parole. Now, they may never get paroled, but the mere fact that we would make them eligible for parole in all cases, I find objectionable. I think there are just some situations that merit placing somebody in a prison confinement for every day that they're alive for the rest of their lives. And I just wanted to go on record as saying it. I think this bill goes too far. It allows for something that and I think there's some cases across the country where murderers have been let out on parole and have committed even more egregious acts and more murders. I'm sorry, there's just some things that when people do it, they deserve to stay in prison for the rest of their lives. I feel strongly about it, and I just wanted to go on record as saying that. And the third item I had is the public safety complex proposal, but at the time I thought we'd be discussing it last week, and we did not, and so I'll save my comments for when it comes up on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ward.
21P12, a request of the Public Works Director to address the City Council to discuss preparations for the new playground area at Dunn Park and inform the City Council regarding Wood Avenue bid for repaving.
Director?
So just briefly, I believe it was last year, there was a little discussion about Dunn Park, and there was a concern or that it was neglected, or so I just want to report tonight that we began some groundwork for a new playground that the mayor had purchased last year. So probably sometime late spring, it'll be up and running, and it'll be state-of-the-art equipment and new swing set, totally new playground, and you know, there's an extensive amount of groundwork to prepare that playground, so we've begun that. So just very quickly. And lastly, I don't know if you noticed, but Wood Avenue, I just put that out to bid for repaving from one end to the other. That's badly needed. And so that's out to bid. I believe it's due later this month. And that'll be paid for by the money appropriated by you all, 21075 Ordinance with the American Rescue Plan. So that's the first of many projects that, you know, we have in the pipeline.
Director, if I can, thank you for that. I've noticed for a while National Grid has spent a lot of time on Wood Avenue, but near the intersection of Cass Avenue. Is their work complete now?
Yes, they signed off on it last week, so that was, you know, like a junction, if you will.
Okay.
But that'll be taken care of too, that section. But National Grid, they won't pay for that because we requested that gas line be upgraded because we knew we were going to be paving that road eventually. So they went from one end to the other. So it's not like one that they just go in and repair that they're responsible for.
Okay, so that's not one that they'll pick up a portion of it?
No.
Okay.
No, that'll. Well, as I said, that's one of the ones that when we discussed, we appropriated the money for.
Yes. No, I know you said it, but I know they had spent a lot of time on that road.
Yeah, well, it's long. I mean, it's basically from Diamond Hill Road to Cass Avenue. So it's one of our, you know, cut-through streets, busiest streets in the city. So, and it's, you know, it's long overdue.
Okay. Any comments or questions for the director? Councilman Ward.
Quick one. When we were first discussing ARPA funds and parks, I had mentioned or asked about the possibility, because of Dunn Park being so far away from World War II Veterans Memorial Park and the water park there, whether or not there would be some possibility of using some of the ARPA money for, I don't want to overstate it, a misting area, some place where a water connection can be put in that would be either on a timer or temperature controlled from outdoor temperature, something that would allow the kids that are living up in the neighborhood who can't get down to World War II Park for whatever reason to have a place where they could get wet and simply cool off in the summer months when it gets particularly hot. And I don't know if that's been discussed or considered, but I would like to hope that we could look at something like that, because I think the kids in the neighborhood would probably appreciate being able to walk under some fresh water that'll help cool them off in the summer months.
Well, that's I'll let the mayor respond to that. I mean, anything's possible. There's water lines that run through there, but you know, sometimes, you know, it has to be a little more elaborate than a cooling. There's some safety mechanisms. Health gets involved.
Well, yeah, and I'm not. That's why I'm not.
Drainage.
I'm not talking about recycled water. I'm talking
Right.
about something that's coming off of a straight sanded city water line in a very fine mist. I've experienced it at various zoos and parks where you're walking through, and they'll have just a hose over your head that's got pinholes in it that just throw a mist out into the air that keeps you cool, and it's using water off of the city's water line. That's all I'm talking about. I'm just talking about something to cool kids off. I'm not talking about the equivalent of what's down in World War II.
Yeah. Well, as I said,
if it's possible to
that's a discussion.
consider or look into to see with, you know, it is one of the things that I think contributes to a healthy experience for the kids to induce them to come to the play area in the heat of summer when they may otherwise not go to the playground, because they know they can take a moment to cool off when they're out there, and possibly make it something that gets them outdoors more, maybe less time with their electronic entertainment. Just a thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Yes, Council President?
Councilwoman Sierra.
I just wanted to take a minute. Thank you, Director D'Agostino. That was one of the issues that I had brought forth last year, Dunn Park. So I really do appreciate you going down there and obviously upgrading the equipment. I know there's quite a bit of work that has to be done there, as you pointed out, but that certainly is a very much appreciated start. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
Councilman Gillette.
are we starting the sidewalks yet?
Well, it's not on the docket, but, yeah. Well, very soon, April. As soon as the vendor commits a date, then I'll put that on as a communication. But as of right now, there's no date committed, but April, sometime in April.
Thank you.
You have some in mind?
Well, the liquor store on River Street,
Yeah.
I mean on Fairmount Street that,
Yeah, there are some.
All right, let's be careful here. We're drifting.
yeah, we are, I know.
Back to the agenda. Anyone, any other comments for the director regarding what he has on the agenda? All right, moving on now to
Actually, Council President, I just want to respond to,
Mayor.
right. So just so everybody's aware, Dunn Park was ordered probably a year ago. Because of the situation with COVID and because of the fact that factories were not producing the equipment. As you know, the equipment was removed. It was ordered. The old equipment was removed for safety reasons. The new equipment was ordered, but when it was ready to be shipped, it was the dead of winter, so we couldn't install it. So this is something, as you know, we've been improving all the parks across the city, and this was on the in line to be replaced. So I appreciate the fact that the council feels that it was a good investment. We're happy that we did it. And as far as the cooling stations go, Councilman Ward, I'm thinking that if you're thinking of that particular area, which would probably be the children who live in Bourdon Boulevard, mostly, that's kind of the end of where the park is. Maybe it's a conversation to have with the commissioners of the Housing Authority, because it may be better located within the complex to help to keep the kids like near their units, and potentially the same thing at Morin Heights.
Do they have playground facilities within their housing development?
I had a conversation regarding that a while back, asking the director back then to check into that, to see if we could put scattered play equipment throughout, because sometimes it is difficult to get, allow your children to go to the park unsupervised. And I just think because it is densely populated, it probably made sense to have the play equipment within the complexes. So I will revisit that to see if any action was taken on that.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Mr.
All right,
President,
move.
Mr. President,
Councilman Gillette.
I'd like to move out of order 22RC01.
Motion made by Councilman Gillette,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra to take out of order 22RC01. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22RC01 is before us.
I'd like to give the
Well,
first few
let's
minutes.
just let the clerk read it first.
Okay.
From Councilwoman Sierra reporting on the Woonsocket Heritage Canal District Commission.
Can we have a motion to receive, please?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Ward,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez to receive 22RC01. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Councilman Gillette.
I'd like to give the microphone to Councilwoman Sierra.
Thank you.
to start.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councilman Gillette. Thank you, council members, for allowing both of us to present this report to you this evening on our committee. As you probably are aware, the last several months have been very busy. The committee meets on a monthly basis and consists of 7 members and 2 counselors, Councilman Gillette and myself. At the first meeting, we were reintroduced to the project and one another. The next couple of meetings were spent establishing the structure and appointing the officers. The officers then delegated the duties into groups, and we worked in groups on identifying a location, studying the physical structure and its limitations. We also exchanged ideas regarding the plan. The architectural team brought renderings and ideas forward pretty much at every meeting. Everything that was discussed, we were able to see photos and how it would lay out thereafter. The committee also advanced its research in all aspects of the project, including financial tools that could be utilized for potential investors, resources for funding related to the actual development of the targeted area. We also, they also resourced and met with communities that have projects in progress. A meeting with Attleboro, as most of you know after today's Woonsocket Call article, also took place. They have a project very similar that's well underway. The committee then identified what experts would be needed during each phase. The committee recommended and recruited a panel of advisors with expertise in economic development, engineering, real estate, and local tourism. All committee and advisory members work on a volunteer basis. During this time, the committee also worked on a campaign to engage the public. They have developed relationships with both the Woonsocket Call and the Valley Breeze. Multiple radio appearances have been made, as well as a Facebook page created. The page is called Woonsocket Heritage Canal District Project, and obviously everyone is invited to follow. We also encourage and appreciate any participation. These are the tools that the committee will be using now and in the future to keep the public apprised and engaged during this process. The committee will be making a detailed presentation on April 4th, which will further outline the findings. The administration, council, and public will get a chance to see the culmination of the work done so far and what it may look like going forward. Thank you, council. Thank you, administration. And thank you to the media outlets for helping bring this potential project to the public. Councilman Gillette will be adding to this report and covering what may happen over the next couple months.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
She makes a hell of a better presentation that I would have made, so let's let her go first, right? And actually, as far as the work that the committee has done so far, I can honestly say that I am very proud to have played a big part in putting this committee together and putting the legislation in, along with Councilwoman Sierra, and that the work that you just heard about that's being done is nothing more but the beginning of the work. The actual hard work starts after the presentation is going to be made 2 weeks from now at the next city council meeting. And those of you who are listening and are watching on TV and that are here, I'm asking you to put that date aside 2 weeks from now to come down and either come down in person, because there will be some sketches that will be available for you to look at, but at least listen in or watch on TV, because the more this gets out, the more the community starts to realize how big the potential is on this potential project, that I honestly am so excited at the fact that the actual information is going to be coming out for everyone to be able to digest, and actually I know a lot of people are going to be in awe. And I'm hoping, that, Mayor, that you're going to be here at the next city council meeting, and the planning department will be here. This will be the first that they have seen of the information, and that's because the council has put this committee together, and we're reporting to the council first, And at the end, everything will be handed to the council, to the mayor, and to the planning department, for total scrutiny. And then the administration next year and the city council next year will be able to turn around and decide which way we're going to go. Either throw it in a trash can and or start the procedure by electing a new committee that can take charge of it and actually start to make it happen. So if we could all put that date aside, I'm not asking the city council, you're going to be here anyway, but I'm really, really excited about this and hope that we have a good turnout at City Hall to see the renderings that are going to be displayed and to hear the presentation. So that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Gillette. Thank you, Councilwoman Sierra. Moving on to the regular course of business, unfinished business of previous meetings.
22006, granting the construction of an exterior entrance exit way for 43 Railroad Street on James Street.
Motion to approve?
Motion made by Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments? Director, you had said that you were going to run it by public safety.
And we did, and
Okay.
They didn't have a concern. I will say, if this was on any other street other than the one it's on, because it's not well-traveled at all, so I would have an issue with it, but because of where it's, situated.
And I have similar feelings, and I was there yesterday. The whole time I was there, I never saw a single vehicle on that road, so
Yeah.
it is a very, very low travel.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
You missed me.
Why, were you there too?
I drove by.
Okay.
Just one question, and maybe it's for public safety at some point as to whether or not, I know there's parking allowed on that side of the street. Is there any indication that because of this stairway coming out as far as it does into the sidewalk, that for a limited amount of distance in front of that stairway, there should be a prohibition against parking, specifically in case someone's being dropped off or picked up at that doorway?
Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
If you could just look into whether or not you believe that's appropriate. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoyer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron?
Yes, and 22006 is approved. Second passage, 7-0.
22007, repealing the land use restrictions on the former Kendrick Avenue School, property delineated within City of Woonsocket, Ordinance 04042.
Motion pass.
Motion made by Councilman Gillette, seconded by Councilman Susi. Comments?
Council President?
Councilman Canoyer.
I'll support the removal of the deed restrictions. However, I'm of the view that when the city conveyed this property, 16, 17 years ago, back in 2004, they specifically had a deed restriction, and it was for community use, and that's why they conveyed it for a nominal price of $1. But if we're now going to release that restriction and use it for residential property, which I guess I'm fine with, I think we should be compensated, because if we were going to sell that property or get rid of the property back in '04, like we did with Second Ave, like we did with the old school on Social Street, all of them, we got at least $50,000 or more. So with that, I'm going to propose an amendment that would, to Section 1, at the end of it, that we release we remove and repeal the deed restrictions contained in Section 2 of the City of Woonsocket Ordinance 04-42. And here's the part that I want to add in. Provided that the removal of the subject deed restrictions is contingent upon the city receiving $40,000 from the Boys and Girls Club to be paid to the city within 5 days of the closing of the sale of the property, to be deducted from to be deducted from the sale proceeds. So make that motion.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Comments on the amendment?
Council President?
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I'm not in favor of that, only because I think it's very important for the development of the Boys and Girls Club that is happening. The current, I think it's something that our city really needs. We've been watching the process, and I know that they've been trying to raise a lot of funds to provide a place where our teens and our kids can go and have a place of recreation. They are, and not only that, I've seen all the work that they've done during COVID when there were places for people to go and study. I called within a day or two the work that they're doing with our children. I think it's important, and I know that they've been working on getting funding, and if that funding can go towards that, I would prefer. I just think right now it's something that it would benefit more our community, that money going towards the finishing of that project.
Okay, any other comments?
Mr. President?
Councilman Susi.
Yeah, I concur with Councilwoman Gonzalez. Yeah, to take, $40,000 from an entity like the Boys and Girls Club, I think would be, yes, a mistake for sure. They're in the process of finishing their project, which will be a wonderful project at their new location. This will make this property available for other development. It's all good. I mean, to put that extra burden on the Boys and Girls Club, which is, kind of a pretty, not a sacred place, but certainly a well-respected entity in this town and many communities, the Boys and Girls Clubs. I think it's just an overburdensome on an entity like that, which is doing so much good in our community that a lot of it we don't see, but a lot of it still goes on every day. Honestly, I just feel it's not necessary. I think the process is going along. This thing will be redeveloped. To get $40,000 from a rock, it doesn't seem to make sense to me.
You both know how much they're selling the property for?
I don't.
I also toured the Boys.
No, but do you know how much they're selling the property they paid the city $1 for?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much they're selling it for? $400,000.
Yeah.
This is 10%.
Right, but that's
A realtor
how many years
would
ago
get.
was that done? And it was never said that they couldn't ever sell it.
Yes.
Was it ever said that?
Well,
way?
no, but it was said that you couldn't use it for residential.
Right, unless we changed it. Right.
So we can leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still feel it. Again, I think it's an entity that's worth that. I think they can certainly use that money in a constructive way that it would be a benefit to most of the community, a lot of the community that they
Sure.
serve. Yeah, that's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, no, that's
Council
good. Any
President,
other comments?
I vote Council President second.
Councilwoman Gonzalez for the second time?
I've also toured the new facility, and I've seen.
Just be careful. It's the new facility's not on the agenda.
Okay.
So
400,000. It's not even half or 1/3 of what they would need to complete the other project. So it's still taken from an entity that still needs the funding.
Okay.
I would not support this.
Mr. President, could council, could we just read the amendment back again? Councilman Canoyer's amendment.
Yep. Section 1 would change as follows. It would read as follows. The Woonsocket City Council hereby removes and repeals the deed restriction contained in Section 2 of the City of Woonsocket Ordinance 040-42, provided that the removal of the subject deed restriction is contingent upon the city receiving $40,000 from the Boys and Girls Club to be paid to the city within 5 business days of the closing or the sale of the property, with funds to be deducted from the sale proceeds.
So if I could make a suggestion, after the Boys and Girls Club, I would put a period. I wouldn't put within 5 days of the closing. In other words, the price is $40,000 for the removal of the restriction. Not within 5 days. They pay it at the closing or they pay it before. I wouldn't add that within 5 days of the closing. It's just it's conditioned upon the payment of $40,000.
Okay.
Okay.
I amend my amendment to read as follows, as I just did by deleting the to be paid to the city within 5 business days, etc. So, Council President?
Councilman Canoyer?
So, I hear what you're saying, but the reality is we're sitting up here, we're selling taxpayer assets. This was back in 2004. Just like when we sold Second Ave, and they did good work, and they brought in much-needed housing. Everybody does something good, I get it. But this is a city taxpayer asset that we had. We gave it away for $1. If we were going to sell it for residential property, we would have done it back in '04. And we would have sold it for significantly more than $1, and we would have collected taxes every year since then. If you just assess each unit, they're gonna put in 15 units, and you assess each one of them at like $35,000, we would have been collecting roughly $18,000 a year in taxes for the last 15 years or so. We didn't do that. So I think 40,000 is a pittance in the grand scheme of things, and it's not, again, I don't like having these debates about who's doing good work and who's not. It's, every taxpayer is working hard. And in addition, well, I won't get into the other project because it's not on the agenda, but that other project that took another taxpaying piece of property off the tax roll. So I won't get into that, but I understand your position, but I don't think $40,000 on a piece of property that we could have easily have sold for significantly more, and particularly since they have 400 coming in. We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Council President?
Councilwoman Sierra.
I will be supporting in favor of the amendment as well. I feel a lot similar to what Councilman Canoia feels, and of course we know that the Boys and Girls Club do great work within our city, and for their great work they get tax exempt property. They didn't pay taxes on Kendrick, nor will they at their new location. That's the benefit of doing such great work in the city. We certainly, I am of the same mindset as Councilman Canoia, that the city taxpayers do deserve a break as well, and 40,000 certainly isn't a break for the taxpayers, but what it does say is that we are paying attention. When we agreed to sell that piece of property for $1, we were under the impression we were selling it permanently to a tax-free organization that would continue to do work in our community. That's not the case right now. So I will be supporting this this ordinance
Amendment.
with the amendment. Yep, thank you.
Mr. President?
Any other,
Yeah,
Councilman Susi?
Just one last comment. That's all true. The fact is, this property will be on the tax rolls after it gets developed as a whatever they do, a multifamily. So that's a benefit to this community. That's where the taxpayer gets the benefit. This little thing will stop paying taxes for many years to come, hopefully. So that's the benefit. So to take that and then take 40 grand again from this very worthwhile organization, I think it's just to me, is overburdensome for them. That's all.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just one more. Sorry.
Anyone else for the first time?
Mr. President.
Councilman Gillette.
Did you want to talk, Councilman?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Another point, too, is that we're setting a precedence here. If we pass this the way that it's written, without the amendment, we're telling people that, hey, let's buy some property from the city of Woonsocket. We'll tell them we're going to use it for so-and-so for a period of years, and then we'll sell it and make a killing on it. And then if we end up refusing them later in the years, the council will refuse. They'll say, well, wait a minute, you did it for the other one. What's the difference between them and me? So there's a precedence here that, if we leave it the way that it is, as a matter of fact, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on a city council, but I think city councils in the future, before we do something like we did with this property in the first place, need to put an amendment on anything that is written or passed by the council that says, and if when you no longer need that, then return it, because that's our taxpayers' property that we're letting you use for $1. You know what I'm saying? We have to take care of the whole. I understand where you're coming from, and if they have fundraisers and I can attend, I'd be glad to do something like that. But we are the overseers of the Woonsocket taxpayer dollars. And for that reason, I'm going to be going with the amendment, and hopefully in the future they'll think more clearly on the way they write legislation. Thank you.
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
I agree with Councilman Gillette in one regard. When this was transferred to the Boys and Girls Club off of the city property list as a former school, it probably should have had a caveat that should the Boys and Girls Club ever stop using the facility, that it would revert immediately at no cost back to the city of Woonsocket, so that the city could make its choice about how it wanted to dispose of the property or put it to another use. Because then the city would have reaped the benefit of selling the property, and that probably would have been the appropriate thing to do. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, so it's not for us to sell. I don't disagree that we should be compensated to some limited degree for the property, and to discuss in public that which is usually not discussed in public. We could always use the Menard administration strategy, because when there was a nonprofit corporation granted use of or sold the former Pothier School, CDBG granted that nonprofit through, I don't know if it was through home funds or through other funds, because they were going to be a nonprofit subsidiary of the Housing Authority developing real estate for rental or sale of condos or whatever they were doing, and they granted them $80,000 out of CDBG money. And then they sold the property to that same organization for, ready, $80,000. We call that the CDBG conversion methodology, to get the money out of the federal pool and put it back in the city's pocket. Nothing illegal about it, by the way. It's just a strategy. And so I guess the question is, if we take $40,000 out of the pocket of the Boys and Girls Club, who clearly can use it, and I can't dispute that, I'm sure would put it to good use. And frankly, I don't think the Boys and Girls Club that was in place when this organization started out in that location is the same Boys and Girls Club that has now taken over as the Northern Rhode Island Boys and Girls Club, operating in Cumberland, Lincoln, now in Woonsocket, is the same entity at all, and certainly didn't have nefarious intentions in doing this. So I guess I could, if we had some mechanism to not be taking money out of the Boys and Girls Club's pocket, support this, and I support it on the principle of we should get something for the sale of the property, but I think the ordinance that sold the property failed in not having it revert back to us. And I appreciate Councilman Canoyer's desire to protect the interests of the city, but I'm struggling with this one, because isn't protecting the integrity of the operation of the Boys and Girls Club and what they do for the kids in the community also serving the best interests of the city? And I think in this instance, I may have to fall on the side of the Boys and Girls Club, because yeah, $40,000 may seem like a lot of money, but in the scheme of a $100 million budget, not so much. In the scheme of $56 million of tax levy, not so much. In the scheme of the operation of a Boys and Girls Club that operates on grants and donations and volunteerism, it's a lot. So my philosophy tells me that I think that's the way I'm going to have to go on this. Sorry.
And I would just add, in the scheme of what we will be discussing in a little while regarding the people that we helped, the homeless people we helped, with $70,000, and it's on the agenda for an extension tonight. $40,000 may not seem like a lot in a $156 million budget, but I would tell you, go ask any of the people that were taken off the cold streets this winter and ask them if they think that $40,000 would be good for their use next year, as opposed to, instead of giving the Boys and Girls Club $360,000, because that's what we're doing. We sold it for $1, and they're selling our property for $400,000. So they're benefiting, if this amendment goes through, they're benefiting for the amount of $360,000. And we spent $70 and helped some very desperate people. And I think that if we're going to start saying how the money's better spent, and when we should be frugal and when we should just let things go, we're on a slippery slope. And I think that I will err on the side of always doing what is right. And I will be supporting this to do what is right. Any other comments? Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I do agree with Councilman Gillette that we are setting a precedent here. And we're talking about a property that is not our property. The moment that it was sold for $1, at that time, it ceased to be the city's property. And if there was a contingency that when they sold, there would be a percentage going back to the city, I agree. It's in the initial contract that should have happened. Because at the same time, what are we saying when we have other situations that we might benefit another nonprofit or give something? Are we saying we're only going to give it to you for a specific, but it's still ours? It's not ours. It stopped being our property. It was only $1. And yes, the city did not get taxes for it. It's a nonprofit. I get all of that, but all those facts were known when it was sold, and it's no longer ours, it's theirs. And there was nothing written saying that if they do sell, then part of it still belongs to us. And that's why I can't support it.
But let me just, I just want to respond to that. You're absolutely right. Nothing was written that said that the money should be paid to the city, that the property should revert back. But you know what was written? A deed restriction. So maybe I will go by the letter of the law today and not support the amendment, but also not support the deed restriction removal. And then the property is worthless. And instead of getting a net of $360, they get $0. Because that is what's written. Let's go with what's written. What's written is a deed restriction that our forefathers had a reason to put in that sale. And maybe we are not doing what they intended by removing that, and we should just let it go, and then they have a big building that can forever be vacant. And I don't know that that's the best thing for the neighborhood, but if we're going to go with the letter of the law, maybe that's what we should do. Any other comments? On the amendment?
Mr. President, you just covered what I was going to cover.
Yeah.
So on the amendment, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
No.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
No.
Councilman Ward?
No.
President Gendron?
Yes. In 22007 is amended 4-3. On the main motion as amended,
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
Mayors, Mr. Solicitor, whoever can answer the question. I notice that the purchase and sale includes 3 lots, which also includes the recreation area at the back of the building. And I know that that is, I've been told, has an additional deed restriction on it, limiting it to recreational use. But it might be a restriction under the control of the redevelopment agency. Is that where the deed restriction came from?
So when you say 3 lots, I believe the 3 lots would be where the building sits.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Boys and Girls Club actually bought a house to the right of the
Oh, it's not the play area in the back.
Well, they bought a house to the right and they demolished it so they could create additional parking.
Correct. Yes, that's the parking area.
Correct. So
But
that's something that they bought separately on their own. That was not part of this deed restriction that you're speaking of. And then the lot in the back, I believe around 2016 or so, that was utilized for basketball.
It's a
The
basketball.
redevelopment agency turned it over to the city. The city allowed the Boys and Girls Club to build a playground and basketball court back there. So that still needs to be addressed because the developers would need to utilize that land also. I don't believe that's in your
So
legislation tonight.
that is the third lot I'm speaking of, is the area where the basketball court is. It's got, I understood it to have two problems. One is that there was a deed restriction
Correct.
limiting it to recreational use, that restriction was placed on it by the redevelopment agency, or was it placed by the city? I couldn't find anything in the city, in the council records, putting any restriction on that.
Are we talking about this ordinance with the deed restriction or a different deed restriction?
I'm talking about the purchase and sale agreement associated with the whole property transaction, not specific to this deed restriction, but the transfer of the property in general, which my vote on whether to remove a deed restriction would be contingent upon other considerations in the entire transaction. So it's tangentially associated with the deed restriction removal, because I understood that there's further deed restriction and the fact that the additional part of the property that's being sold still has a restriction in terms of it being zoned as a passive recreation zone, not a residential zone. So I'm still not sure whether or not this whole transaction is in discussion or just simply exclusively this deed restriction, because I think for me, one is dependent on the other.
Solicitor, you were signaling?
So I would just add, first of all, I haven't had any contact with the buyers, so I don't know what the development is. I know there's a residential development, but in any case, in every project, whoever is buying the property is going to hire a lawyer, and they're going to do a title search to obtain a clear title. And whatever their lawyers tell them they need, and whatever the bank tells them they need to get the title, I assume they'll come to us and ask us. So I wouldn't really fret about it too much, because, you know, they're going to pay someone money to determine whether or not they have a clear title or not. And I assume when they determine what they need to consummate the deal, they'll contact the solicitor's office, and then we'll bring it back to the council. But I don't think we should be worrying about it. It's their deal. It's a private deal. We have a deed restriction on at least one lot, and whatever else they need to consummate that deal, I'm sure they'll come calling pretty quick. So I think that's how it normally goes.
Fair enough.
Any other comments on the main motion as amended? All right, so this is an ordinance, so roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia? Yes. Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron?
Yes, and 22007 is approved 7-0 as amended. Moving on to new business, Madam Clerk.
22008, granting a petition for a new joint pole for National Grid and Verizon on Park East Drive.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Mr. President,
Councilman Gillette.
I'm curious as to why Verizon and National Grid are both going to have their names on the pole. Can somebody explain to me why this is happening?
Yeah, this
Why are
is,
they doing it together?
this is for the RESH project. And this is needed to secure the pole that carries the utilities. That's what this is.
Okay, and it's just going to be for that area?
Oh, yeah,
Didn't even think of that.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This avoids having to go across the street with a line, so.
Good, good, okay.
Keeps it clean
That
on the
is
same
clean.
side, so.
Thank you. Yep.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron?
Yes, and 22008 is approved 7-0 first passage.
22009, issuing fee for use of composting facility.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
I have a comment. Is the stickers
Director?
will be free this year or no?
No, this brings us back to the 25. This was submitted by the administration, so I'm assuming the last 2 years we had
So just for your own mathematical purposes, because it's a big math night tonight, we take in $12,500 from the $25 fee. Approximately 500 stickers are sold.
Okay, and just to be clear, we had decided to not have the fee the last 2 years because of COVID and the inability for people to come into City Hall. I think things are starting to return to normal, so I think that's why this is before us. But it does say for a $25 fee. So, all set? Any other questions, comments?
Fuel is up, everything's up, I mean.
Yeah, no. Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron?
Yes, and 22009 is approved 7-0. Director, for the next meeting, we do have to pass this a second time. Can you bring with you for that meeting the amount that it costs us for that operation?
I can tell you right now, it's just over $58,000 annually, but that contract expires this year. So Director D'Agostino and I are meeting with the town of Blackstone.
Okay.
In April.
So right now it is $58,000, and we collect 12.
It allows the DPW to use it 24/7.
No, but I'm just saying, when you look at, we're not making money, is what all I'm trying to say. Okay, thank you. So you don't have to bring it next meeting.
22010, authorizing access and egress easements.
Motion approved, Jim.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Just one question, Director.
Councilman Canoia.
With these easements, which I will support, I'm quite certain, but this does not create any impediments or prohibit us from doing what we may want to do over that property.
Not at all.
Okay.
Just administrative
Yep.
nonsense, really.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron?
Yes, and 22010 is approved 7-0. First passage.
22R28, approving and authorizing the administration to build a $32 million consolidated public safety complex utilizing state and opera funding.
Motion to approve?
Motion made by Councilwoman Gonzalez,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Ward.
I know there's been public discussion of this $32 million price tag. $16 million is a lot of funds. We don't really have any plans in place. We don't have any location. And frankly, all of that is true. However, if we are to use ARPA funds for this, it has a time limit. It's something that must be considered quickly, and there will be a requirement because if it is a consolidated building, it will require something at or around 3 acres of land, which frankly I don't think the city possesses in any particular location that's conducive to a public safety building. And so there will need to be much discussion about where it would be located and how that property would be either converted and acquired, and what kind of plan would be done for the building, and contracts with architects and builders, and a whole series of items in planning for this. There is much yet to do. This is intended to simply set aside money and possibly leverage it against some state funding to allow for this to start as a process. So I consider this just the beginning of a very rapid but fairly lengthy process, but not more than a couple of years because we'd run out of time. And so we don't run out of time for this to be properly considered. I'll support this as an initial step in a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Canoia.
So I will echo Councilman Ward's sentiment. This is just a start. There are no final decisions made yet. This is just to basically start the process so that we can potentially get funding from the state, and it provides us with options. There's still a lot of work to be done on this. We've just started this process, and one of the things I do want to mention is we've all been received or seen some public commentary on this out on the cesspool of social media, and they talk about this as the expansion of the police state and expansion of the police infrastructure. This is a public safety complex, and some of the same people that are peddling expansion of the police state and police infrastructure are also the same people that were happy to tweet when they needed service from our fire department and rescue department to go to their homes and service their families. So this is not just police, it's EMA, and fire and rescue. So this notion that it's the expansion of the police state is just the usual typical false rhetoric that you hear from certain quarters. In any event, I will be supporting this. This does not commit us to do anything other than seek the funding from the state. There's a lot of work to be done, so there's no final decision here. So I'll leave it at that.
Solicitor, can I ask you a question regarding this?
Sure.
I know that you you continually tell us that whereases have no bearing on a resolution or an ordinance. Do you feel the same way with the title of a resolution?
Yeah, the legal significance is now therefore be it resolved.
Exactly.
That's what the city council is deciding.
So
whereas is in the title, even I recall that Councilman Ward read the explanation of a legislative bill, and we've always been told, don't go by the explanation because sometimes it's wrong. It just doesn't identify the real issues in the bill because it's just something that law revision did.
So
go ahead.
You're just getting to, I feel that when you read this resolution and you read the title is not factual to what this resolution does. Because the title says approving and authorizing the administration to build a $32 million consolidated public safety complex. That is it's definitely overstated because when you read the section 1, it says the Woonsocket City Council hereby approves and authorizes the administration to go out to bid. That's the limit of this resolution. Right. So nothing else can happen but going out to bid. And I think that sometimes it's misleading when they have whereases that read into something more than it is, and especially when a title like this is somewhat misleading as to what the resolution does. So that being said, everything above now therefore is irrelevant. What we're doing is authorizing a resolution to go out for RFP.
Right, but I would also suggest that even the title itself, it's authorizing the administration to build a $32 million consolidated public safety complex utilizing state and opera funding. So it's not authorizing, it is the beginning of a step. In other words, you have to have both. You have to have state and
no, I understand, but I mean, it's the thing is when you read that title, it sounds like as Councilman Ward points out, this is the very beginning of this process, and Section 1 better identifies exactly how early this is in the process because it simply authorizes an RFP. So, any other comments?
Mr. President.
Councilman Gillette.
Just to remind the general public that a public safety complex had been talked about ever since the latter part of the Menard years when she was mayor. And there was no possible way that we on the city council and Mayor Menard could come up with the kind of money that we needed in order to build this public safety complex. This, in my opinion, is an opportunity that we need to take advantage of. And the reason why is because the taxpayers of the city of Woonsocket are already the third or fourth highest taxpayers per capita in the state of Rhode Island. Most of our residents, on average, earn somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000 to $35,000 per year. They cannot afford to have any kind of a tax increase that would actually bankrupt them, maybe, depending on circumstances. This is an opportunity of getting a public safety complex for the city of Woonsocket that will, in fact, save us money in the other locations that we're throwing good money at, like the money that we just threw at the police department to put in toilets. That was a lot of money, okay? We're going to have to keep on doing things like that to the complexes that are there. The older complexes need to be eliminated. The new one needs to be built, in my opinion. We're going to be able to do it without actually touching the pockets of the Woonsocket taxpayers. That's the way that it looks like to me, and that's why I'm going to be voting yes on this tonight.
Any other
Mr.
comments?
President?
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
This, I agree, is a very once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity. I had the pleasure to go to North Providence and tour their public safety complex. And I think I want to limit my statement today to say that everything is tied together when it comes to public safety, and it matters to all of us. Every person in this council cares about the lives of the people in our city. And we have many issues, and a lot of it will be tied to some of the resources that are going to come out of this complex. They save lives. The people that are in working with the police, with the fire, with rescue. And I think this is an opportunity to equip them and give them everything that they need to maximize the safety, the protection, and the saving of lives. I also don't think it's one thing or another. This is just part of the budget, and I don't know that we will ever have this opportunity come our way again. So I am in support of this, and I do appreciate every voice that was said today, and we are listening. Yeah.
If you can't contain your comments, please leave the room.
Council President, right?
Director Gillette?
Yeah, so this is,
You know what? You need to be quiet, okay? There's a meeting going on. You lost your opportunity to speak.
have them removed.
You know what? Why don't you leave?
Mayor?
You can't keep quiet. You're gonna have to leave. I have something to say right now. We listen to you people, okay? I don't want this to be a division. I don't want this to be a division of us versus them. This is a process we have.
Y'all, man, if you're
Thank you.
You should be ashamed of yourselves. Absolutely ashamed of yourselves. Your community needs that money.
I'd just like to say, this is what we don't need, is us versus them. This is a process we have in government. We look at things, we talk about things. I don't need your comments either, sir.
I didn't say a word.
You were laughing. It's very important that, public safety has the support of the people. This type of rhetoric is no good. What I will say is that the police department and the fire department work in conjunction with CCA on a regular basis. If anything they know about these problems, substance abuse problems, we work with the courts. We work with the courts with diversion programs to help people. They're on the front line, these police and fire. They're on the front line saving lives every night. And if we have a public safety complex, it's just going to better serve the community. It's a public building. We have a lobby right now at the police department. It's the size of a coat. You don't know how small it is. I mean, we need community rooms. We need to have contact with people and have areas to meet. If we have an area, if we want to have a civilian police academy, we have to rent a school or use a schoolhouse. So I just think, the process is the process. We're here talking about it. Everybody has their opportunity, but in public safety, we don't need any division in how we're doing this. Whatever you people feel is benefit the city, that's what we will do. And if you have us serve the public safety complex and we're still at 242 Clinton Street or the fire stations throughout the city, we're going to serve the city as well as we can. So it's just important that I say that, and hopefully everybody understands.
Director Gillette, I think you couldn't have said it better. This is certainly should have never been turned into us, them, those people. It turns into a circus when this is beginning with a simple discussion, and I think you said it best. All your police, your fire, your emergency management, the rescue, they do a phenomenal job. And this may not come to fruition, but I guarantee you that those men, women will still do a great job. And thank you for the way you said it. It was spot on, so thank you. Any other comments?
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
I just want to expand on my earlier comments. I, too, had the opportunity to tour the North Providence combined police and fire station. Very impressive layout, very efficient layout, designed to do the job more efficiently in terms of how the vehicles process through, how there is adequate space in the building. And I think it was, and I think everybody admitted it was oversized for the North Providence needs, probably closer to the size Woonsocket needs. But again, it's the beginning of a process. There were even some things in there that I thought were excessive, besides the police chief's office, which was about the size of a small home. I think, for instance, they centralized all of their IT services for the entire town of North Providence in one location in that building, including the school department and a whole series of other locations and other items. That may not be the case in Woonsocket. I don't know that it is. It may not require as large a space or as much staffing to handle that. They also included in the building a municipal court. I don't know how much traffic they get through their municipal court, but it had over 100 seats in it. They must have a lot of local crime going on down there. But it can be used for other purposes, but it was a very large space for a municipal court. I don't know that we would need a space quite that big, but you could put a municipal court there because of its proximity to the police department in association with issues that are related to police activity. Their individual offices were, by my measure, 180 square feet. I consider a reasonable office for a single individual working in that space at 120 square feet, and the reason I can say that with certainty is because my single office is 120 square feet, and I have more room than I need. If we took 1/3 of the space for every one of those individual offices in the building, you would cut down the square footage substantially. So that could be something that would that could be a factor in the cost associated with such a structure. All I'm saying, but the point is, you also had a very modern facility for the Sally Port, for the secure areas, for the holding cells that were there for the people that are arrested and held until they're dealt with. It was a modern facility for the people doing the job. It had all of the necessary security measures that you would put inside a building such as that. It was just a very well planned building. There were some things I thought might be more beneficial that they even hadn't thought of when they built it, having to do with projectors, projection, other communication in the building for training that could be incorporated. But it was an impressive facility, I'll say that. And I see the value in such an investment. And the investment in this case goes to the fact that we do need a modern police station. The one we have, though nice, was built at a different time, just like our fire stations were built at a different time. and they served a different kind of purpose. There was not, when every one of our fire stations were built, there was no rescue service at all. There was Marischal ambulance service when they were built. And all that ambulances were transportation and very minimal life support while they moved you to a hospital. We have a full-blown practically have operating rooms on wheels, taking patients to emergency facilities, and we need to provide for them, staff them, and give them the best and fastest access to the people who need the assistance. And this would provide us an opportunity to do that. Now, affordability, we can't afford it. Simple. We're not going to go to bond for that kind of money and be able to pay the bill. But it's necessary if we're to take those fire stations out of service that are antiquated, consolidate, put more staff in one place so that there's a better response time, and bring the police services up to a modern facility that will serve them for many, many years. If we can do it with federal funds and with state resource coming through the federal government, just like if we can do a school building program using state aid that is paid through federal funds or through a bonded authority for state money, combined with the bonding capacity of the state through the infrastructure bank, so that the city isn't going out to bond and having paid direct debt service on those facilities, because it is essentially what I would think a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, or certainly at least once in every 50 years. We would be foolish not to attempt to take advantage of it, put the resources to the best use for a very long-term investment in something that will benefit the citizens of the city for a very, very long time. And I would hope that 40, 50 years from now, they would say thank you for taking the initiative to do the things we can do to last a long time without going to bond, without burdening the taxpayers with an obligation that is not really affordable to many of the people who live in this city. So I'm going to vote to support this and keep this process, or get this process started. Thank you.
Mayor, you and I had some discussions regarding this resolution too, and that you are still actively working on other funding sources. And I didn't know if you wanted to briefly comment that this is the beginning, as it's been said over and over. It's the beginning, and this can go in many different directions.
It can. This is a major undertaking, and I think it's important for us to recognize that as elected officials, our job is not to just legislate for today, but it's to be transformative, to make certain that we're setting the groundwork for the future. As Councilman Ward indicated, I don't think anybody here tonight is complaining that tomorrow I am meeting regarding a $150 million bond that would build new schools within the city of Woonsocket and to renovate schools that need renovation. That's an investment in our children, and that is an investment that I feel is important, that I am supporting, and actually all 7 of you have supported in a resolution before at a different meeting, not at this evening's meeting. So some people may think that it's a waste of money, that schools don't educate, buildings don't educate children. I happen to feel a little differently about that. I think the building that the children are in is important for their education. And I also feel that we are officials who are voting to expend funds, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix the buildings that we have, whether it's our fire departments, our police station, and those funds are not funds that we're able to get back, but they're issues that need to be addressed in order for the buildings to continue to be operational. Many of the councilors indicated, as Councilman Gillette indicated, that we're looking to try to leverage these funds in order to build something that we need and not have to utilize tax revenue that we receive from the taxpayers, specifically through our budget, and taking the opportunities that are given to us through the funding that's coming down from Washington. And we may be able to get these funds and we may not, but we have to put the effort in to try to get these funds. I think when people hear the word public safety complex, and Councilman Canoyer indicated about some of the or the majority of the incorrect information that's been put out on social media regarding a public safety complex, I think everyone recognizes that, you know, if your grandmother, your mother, your sibling is at home and they're in cardiac arrest, you cannot get a rescue to your house fast enough. If your grandmother is home alone and you happen to not be home that particular day and someone's breaking into the house and she calls 911, you're hoping that that police officer is at the door before something happens to her. And you can go on and on. Your child is choking. You know, someone is overdosing. I see the reports. I see what our police officers and our firefighters do on a daily basis to, can you stop the snickering behind my back? Please, be respectful. I can hear you. So we have police officers, firefighters who are administering 1, 2, 3 doses of Narcan to residents in our city who are struggling with drug issues, struggling with opioid issues. It is our public officials, public safety officials, who are out there on a daily basis working with them. As the public safety director indicated, we work with CCA, we work with other agencies. They are within our department. They are working in conjunction on calls, going to certain calls that are made to our dispatch in order to try to help. When someone is considering jumping off our bridge in Woonsocket, which happens, our police officers are trained to try to reverse that action, that potential action by that individual. There is a lot that happens that maybe does not meet the eye of the public, but the work that they do saves lives every single day. And oftentimes there is a lack of respect for what they do. And unless you walk in their shoes, you do not understand what they're doing. But I would suggest for anybody who does not understand what they do, and that's anybody, to take a tour of the department, sit in, ask to speak with any of our public safety officials, our chiefs, and get an understanding of what they're going through and what they're seeing on a daily basis. They are making a difference in the lives of many people within our city. And if any one of us needs their services, our hope is that they're there as fast as they can in order to resolve the problem that we're facing. So this public safety complex is important for every single resident in the city of Woonsocket, because you never know when the day comes that you need one of our public safety officials. So I fully support this resolution. I think it's the right thing for us to do, and I will work as diligently on this as I will for the $150 million for the schools for our children.
Thank you, Mayor.
So,
And with that,
Mr. President,
Director D'Agostino?
So, in closing, I support the mayor. This is a big idea after just, completing the undertaking that we just did recently with another very large project. I can tell you this is a monumental task. It's not a small task. But identifying a piece of property and, building a structure of this magnitude is big. So hopefully the mayor is successful in, collecting some funds so we can still continue to do other projects as well. So.
Thank you.
Mr. President, for the first time.
Councilman Susi.
So it's in my opinion, it's the matching component of this that makes it digestible for me. This opportunity that we have before us with the state paying, what is it, 50% of what this is going to cost approximately? So $16 million coming from the state, and we kick in the rest with the ARPA funding, which leaves a good chunk of ARPA funds that are still available. And it is my hope that we can use some of those funds for the things that we haven't talked about yet, but things like the affordable housing programs, small business granting programs, housing grants, additional homelessness prevention programs, the things that, yes, there is a good core of our constituency that really wants to see that happen, and I think that can't go unsaid. But with this matching grant of, again, $16 million, and then we kick in the difference. I mean, this probably not happen again in our lifetimes, I can't imagine. Woonsocket's extraordinarily fortunate in many different levels with the ARPA funding that also is now, dovetailing with the state grant money. It's just something that is very difficult to say no to. I mean, really, in our positions, it would be almost senseless not to take advantage of that free money from the state. So I will support it, but I am looking for a good chunk of that remaining ARPA funds to be used for the things that have been spoken about this evening. They're vitally important to this community. So that's it.
Council President, I did forget one thing. So for those who think that there isn't a link between the public safety officials and the opioid crisis that we face, I want to be perfectly clear that our public safety officials have certain individuals who are tasked with working with individuals who are suffering from addiction. It is, as the young woman said earlier today, she is spot on. She is spot on that there are problems. As hard as she tried, she just could not get through. And we are trying to use whatever resources that we have available to try to assist families who are going through situations like this. I want it to be known, in case people did not read it in the newspaper. I'm not sure if we were the only community, but I think we were the only community that, in conjunction with Senator Whitehouse, Judge Rogers, our department, we're receiving over an $800,000 grant to help to address this crisis that we face and to try to help people to get the services that they need to be on a better path and to live a healthy life. That is very important to me. And in addition to that, we collectively, all of us, agreed that we would be a part of a lawsuit recently, which was settled. And I think, Solicitor, over $700,000 in funding that we'll be getting to address the opioid crisis.
That's the expectation,
Yeah, that's in addition to the over $800,000 that we'll be receiving to put a program together. So when there is an incident and someone is taken into custody, we have the ability to try to work with them so they understand that there are other options in life and there are other ways out of the mess that they may be in. And we want to be a part of helping them, and that's where these funds will be going. So we're getting 2 tranches of money, one through the work of Senator Whitehouse in conjunction with Judge Rogers and the public safety director and his team, and then the over $700,000 from the opioid settlement. This situation affects every walk of life. It knows no boundaries and no socioeconomic boundaries. So these funds will be utilized in as best a fashion as we can to try to help as many people as we can. But if we help one person in the end, it's one person that is still with us and in a better place.
Very good. Thank you.
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
One quick comment. I know Councilman Sousa was discussing affordable housing initiatives and other matters, but specific to affordable housing, we often hear that housing is not affordable or not that affordable or should be more affordable, and it should be. And the state is taking up some of those initiatives with their set of ARPA funds, and they're also taking up homelessness initiatives with their ARPA funds across the state. However, one way to keep housing affordable in the city of Woonsocket is to keep the local tax burden down. And one way to do that is to utilize this kind of funding source in order to do these kinds of large, long-term projects so that we're not bonding and having to raise the tax rate to pay for it. That, to me, is another reason why we should do this.
Very good. And with that, Madam Clerk, roll call on 22R28.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
Councilman Ward?
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 22R28 is approved, 7-0.
22R30, granting permission to use city property.
Motion pass.
Motion made by Councilman Gillette.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez. Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And just to be clear, before we have the final, this is for the NeighborWorks request for 10 Friday night events. With that being said, 22R30 is approved, 7-0.
22R31, granting permission to use city property.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilman Ward,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Ward?
just to point out that this is for the Hartford Marathon Foundation to run a race that on Saturday, August the 27th, annual RIMA Con Relay. That coming out of the River's Edge complex.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R31 is approved, 7-0.
22R32, granting permission to use city property.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilwoman Gonzalez,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments? Can we get an explanation of, Councilman Susi, I know you're the sponsor, but what exactly, it talks about using a part of Main Street and closing.
6, yeah. It's an outdoor event, and I don't know that many details on it. So is there somebody from the, no?
Public Safety just left, so, Mayor, are you aware of what they want to do as far as closing portions of Main Street?
I apologize, I was not listening.
Okay,
22R32.
Yeah, what is the organization?
It's the DWC.
It's the DWC, but they're looking to close. It says the Downtown Woonsocket Collaborative is hereby permitted to utilize a portion of Main Street in front of 285 Main Street on Sunday, April 24th from 12 to 6.
I can't tell you I know exactly, but I do know, I think it has something to do with Jerry's Bluffing Boutique and an event that they're having, like a spring
Fest
type of thing over there.
So Public Safety's got no problems with this?
I can't answer that. I don't know. You might want to go back to that when he comes back in the room.
Let's table this until Director Gillette comes back. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr.
Motion
Second.
tabled by Councilman Susi, seconded by Councilman Canoia to table 22R32. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R32 is tabled, 7-0.
22R33, abandonment of a portion of Washington Street, Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Motion to pass.
Motion made by Councilman Gillette,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Mr. President?
Solicitor?
Yeah, I think that this should be an ordinance. So we could either make an amendment now to make it an ordinance, or we could,
I think it should be re-advertised because if anyone saw it,
yeah, because, this came up when I looked at it today, but it looks like we're abandoning a piece of property of the city, and it's a right-of-way. So anytime we sell or lease or do anything with property, it should be in an ordinance form. So that's why I would table this and let me look at it again.
Okay. We have a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Motion made by Councilman
Council
Ward.
President, this, once, sir?
Oh.
Sorry.
No,
The only properties this affects, not that I don't know if it makes a difference, is Mount St. Charles. They own the property right and left of this. It's part of their whole campus that they've been doing, some of the houses that they've bought and knocked down, so this is part of adding to their property.
Okay.
It was a dead end.
I think it should still be an ordinance, though.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoia, to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R33 is tabled 7-0.
22R34, in opposition of House Bill 2021 H5245, entitled an act relating to health and safety, harm reduction center, advisory committee, and pilot program, introduced by Representative Edwards, Caldwell, Kazaranian, Slater, Potter, and Kislak.
Motion passed.
Motion made by Councilman Gillette,
Second for discussion,
seconded by Councilman Susi. Comments?
Mr. President?
Councilman
Yeah, and
Susi.
I'll refer to Solicitor DeSimone. I believe this legislation was already law, and it's already been signed by Governor McKee last year. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge.
If you look it up, it was passed in the regular session 2021, and I was informed today that it was already law and already signed into law by the governor. So I mean, we can stand opposition, but it's not pending. It
says, January 29th, 2021, it was
Right.
introduced.
Yeah, and it did pass, and it was signed into law by the Governor McKee. Yeah.
Well, I guess if it already passed, then it would make the legislation moot.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure how it. Yeah. So, I was informed of that today. So.
Well, then I think we should just have a motion to table.
Motion to table?
Motion made by Councilwoman Gonzalez, seconded by the chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R34 is tabled 7-0.
22R35, authorizing the Water Division to renew lease contract with 840 Sea Hill LLC.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilman Canoia. Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R35 is approved 7-0.
22R36, extended the time period to use allocated American Rescue Plan funds previously authorized by Ordinance 21078.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by
Second.
Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Canoia.
all this resolution is doing is extending the period in which they can consume the funds. If you recall, we allocated $70,000 of opera funds to secure a number of rooms at the Woonsocket Motor Inn to provide temporary housing for those in need. And at the time, we said we'd cover 3 months, from January 1st to March 31st. We're fast approaching March 31st, and there are still funds available within that allotment. So all this is doing is saying that the Director of Human Services can continue to provide those in need with housing until the funds are fully utilized.
Very good. And I would like to say there's resources available, not because the director was not able to place people, but because rooms were not always available for the people that she had need for. But as I said at the last meeting, the Director of Human Services has done a yeoman's job managing this money. And when I brought it up at the last meeting, she came up with a very detailed accounting of how many people we've placed, how much money we had left, and said that I believe her estimate was something like 29 days, or she had it down to the number of days that we could extend it. We ended up just deciding to extend it until April 30th, and it'll give another month to help the people of most need. So thank you, everyone, for supporting, who is going to support this. And with that being said, any other comments before I?
Councilman Gendron, I'd just like
Mayor.
to make one
Yes.
comment. This weekend I was out shopping, food shopping, and I ran into a gentleman, and I really wish some other folks were here to hear this story, but they're not. One of the gentlemen that Linda's been working with at the Motor Inn was out where I was, and I recognized him, and I said hello, and he recognized me. We shook hands, and he was working at the establishment that I was going to, and all excited to be there, and said to me, you know, I'm thinking I might want to get a second job. And I said, fantastic. I know a few. I sound like you. Fantastic. I actually sounded like you. He said, I said, fantastic. And I can help you with that. And he said, you know, my only issue is I'd have to figure out how to get from one job to the other. And he was going through the whole scenario. And he said, you know, I think I can keep this job part-time and work somewhere else full-time. And I've been saving my money for a security deposit for my own apartment. And, you know, I'm doing well with that. He looked wonderful. He sounded wonderful. And not only was he excited to be working one job, but he was going to make certain that he could arrange his schedule there to be able to have a second job full-time. And we're going to work on finding that job for him to work full-time. So this is an example of being able to take or work with an individual and raise their self-esteem, bring them to a better place, and just know that there's one less person out there who's suffering. And he is an example of what can be done when the time and resources are spent and people work in conjunction with each other to change somebody's life. And maybe one day he will join us at a meeting and you can be introduced to him.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And 22R36 is approved 7-0.
22R37 in opposition of Senate Bill S2557 and House Bill H7829, mandatory translation services.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
You know, I shared this legislation in an email, and I put in the description, this is why I may soon need medication. Solicitor, is there any body, any public body that is exempt from the open meetings law? Is the General Assembly subject to the open meetings law?
Well, that's debatable. They follow it, but I don't know if you recall a few years back when Langevin was Secretary of State, he wrote a report, access denied.
Okay.
But
well,
every public body.
It's an important aspect to my discussion of these two bills. This is another bill, and again, this is to speak nothing of our state senator Murray, but she signed on to this bill, and listening to the warnings of the solicitor earlier about the other legislation, where in fact I think the summary did a good job of summing up what the legislation spoke to. I'm going to read this entire piece of legislation because it is entitled Open Meetings Relating to State Affairs and Government, and it will change the open meetings law to add the following section, 424615, Translation and Interpretation Services. Part A, all public bodies shall, so it's just not the council, it's the school committee, it's the zoning board, it's the redevelopment agency, it's the tax assessment board of review, name it, they're all subject to a library board. All public bodies shall develop a translation assistance plan setting forth the steps necessary to ensure that all open meetings of said body shall have the proceedings accessible to an individual in a language they understand, comma, upon request. B, the public body shall implement the translation assistance plan under this section by September 1st, 2023. That's it. That's the whole bill. That's it. Soup to nuts. So, in my resolution, I point out that this is, how did I characterize it? Overly simplistic, and it fails to recognize the large number of languages and dialects employed by citizens and non-citizens of the state and the nation, that hundreds of large and small local public bodies would be required to be responsive to, with no controlling criteria to avoid the risk of costly burdens of compliance, without consideration of whether the need is genuine or even initiated by the resident of the city, town, or state. And in fact, I call it an unfunded mandate that has an unlimited risk of cost. Because, as I pointed out in my email to many people discussing this, I don't think these people, I know they're thinking what they're thinking when they write something like this. They're thinking of a language, one language, maybe two. But in fact, I looked up the total number of what's called living languages in the world. There are 6,900 of them.
Can you list them all?
No. Just in the Americas, meaning the Western Hemisphere, there's 903. And so in theory, this general bill, should we get a request in writing from anybody, even me, wanting some other language that I understand spoken or interpreted, the public body, the library board, the zoning board, the planning board, the redevelopment agency, the city council, the school committee, would have to provide translation services to cover French, Spanish, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, Russian, Slovakian, German, Cantonese, Vietnamese, Laotian, Hindi, Farsi, Arabic, Hebrew, Somalian, Dutch, Congolese, Finnish, Swedish, Italian, Eskimo, Apache, Cherokee, Spanish, Portuguese.
I was kidding.
Yeah, I was kidding.
I know you were kidding, and that's as many as I got to because it was pointed out to me by my wife that I failed to mention Polish. And I didn't include Russian and Ukrainian. But I did include the possibility that someone might have us wanting to provide translation assistance for Vulcan or Klingon. The point is, it's a ridiculous bill. But my concern is that there is both a House and Senate bill. They're called companion bills. And anybody who's been in the General Assembly knows that there is a higher chance of passage if you have companion bills sponsored by a large group of people in both houses. And in this case, we have companion bills that are identical. One sponsored by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 House members, and the other by 3, 6, 9, 10 senators, which means there's a high probability of this passing unless we speak now and speak loudly and make it clear that they should not be writing legislation that is a clear, unrestricted, unfunded mandate placed on pretty much every public body in the state, except, as the solicitor points out, the General Assembly, who writes a bill such as this.
I said that's questionable. It's debatable.
I
They
don't
try
doubt
and
that. I
follow
suppose
the
we could try to impose this burden on them too, but they would probably defend it by saying they're exempt. So I would ask this body and any other body in the state that can write a resolution to support this resolution and communicate to the General Assembly and specifically our State Senator Murray, who co-sponsored this legislation, that we should not be doing this. We should be responding to people with a genuine need that we can respond to in an affordable way, but not to have somebody ram down our throat something which is totally uncontrollable and can represent an unlimited cost to the city that may not even be possible to comply with. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Council President.
Councilman Canoyer.
Again, I thank Councilman Ward for keeping an eye on this stuff. It never ceases to amaze me, the nonsense that comes out of that body at times. And what's most troubling is we have local reps, senators, for example, Senator Murray, that signs on and sponsors this stuff, that puts an undue burden on the city. And there's never any discussion or checking in with the city, the local folks at the city level or the city council to get their views on this. This is craziness. As Councilman Ward indicated, we could be every meeting we have, we could get a request for God knows what language. And, I mean, this, at some point, you would hope that we find better candidates, because if this is what we're going to deal with, I would suggest it's time for new candidates at the state level. So I will definitely be supporting this, and I thank Councilman Ward for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Council President?
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I am also not in agreement with such a broad mandate, but I do want to make a note that a lot of the entities already in place, and even through this administration, even if you look at our agenda, every week it says, for additional information or requests or interpreter services or any special services for the hearing impaired, please contact the city clerk, Christina Harmon, 3 days prior to the meeting. I don't see the need for a mandate, at least at our level. I see the effort. Everything goes out in multiple languages, and just our community should know if there's something that they do not understand, in, at least from what I've seen, not just in our administration, but all the nonprofits, even the churches that work in the city. Everybody's willing to help someone that might not understand, and there's resources out there. So I don't see why it would be like a mandate. I understand that it's more statewide, but it's become a general. Pretty much everything I get in the mail comes in multiple languages. So I do think it's very broad, and I will be supporting this opposition.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R37 is approved unanimously, 7-0. Going back to the tabled item, 22R32, can we have a motion to take it off the table?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Ward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R32 is before us. Director Gillette, I'm kind of catching you off guard because you're just coming back in, but 22R32 is a request for the use of a portion of Main Street on Sunday, April 24th. And I just wanted to see if public safety was okay with it, or...
If the director doesn't have the information, I did get it.
And Mr. President, Garrett Mansouri from the
Okay.
WTC is here, so hopefully, or is it Megan?
Well, I'm going to let Director speak if you want to, and we can call other people up, but...
Right, I did speak to Garrett about this, Mr. Mansouri. I just had some other conversations, but I think we'll be able to work it out.
Okay.
He did speak to me about it, and we had actually 2 conversations. So,
public
what was your
safety-
question?
I just wanted to be sure that public safety was okay with it, because I didn't know the extent of what they were planning. And at the time, nobody else was here, but I wanted to be sure that at least public safety was comfortable with it. And if you are, then
Right.
I think, so you're okay.
Yeah, we're going to work out some stipulations.
Very good.
All right.
All right. Then that being said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and 22R32 is approved, 7-0. That being said, there is no further business of the City Council. Councilman Ward made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by the Councilwoman Sierra and Councilman Canoia to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned 7-0 at 9:13 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.